I almost got Mr. Jinx out then, guys. I wanted to show him off a little bit and do a little bit of a talk. But he's just too comfortable in this enclosure and he just doesn't want to come out. He came onto my hand, he literally crawled onto my hand, so I placed my hand, because I don't like to be forceful at all with him. I don't like to just go in there and grab him because it'll stress him out, and it's not good to do that anyway. So I like to be patient and just let him choose. But tonight he's just quite happy being in his domain. So yeah. But I kind of wanted to talk, really. I mean, it just sort of sprung to my mind while I was washing dishes. It's amazing what things come to your mind when you're washing dishes and cooking and things like that. So I wanted to talk about this sort of, well, a bit about the psychology of, keeping a leopard gecko. I mean, what makes us tick? What, out of all the thousands of hobbies that are out there, why go into leopard gecko care or reptile care, amphibian care? These guys, there's something about them that I just love. I mean, just look at that face for one. Look at those eyes. I don't know. They're just I don't know how to describe it. It really. I mean, I can talk for Britain, as you all know, but like literally, I'm just like, I can't think of a word that describes the reason why I love these guys so much. I mean, is it the character? Must be something to do with their character. But then the other animals that I have 2 little dogs. They've got character, which makes them unique and so adorable. So, and this guy has definitely got character. And does that mean to say that the keepers, so like, for example, me, have I got character? Well, I suppose I have. I'm a little bit quirky, a little bit kind of geeky, maybe, a bit nerdy, a bit obsessed. Yeah, so it's kind of like an interesting concept to think about the sort of psychology of the keepers. We talk about the animals that we keep, but what about the actual like mindsets of the keepers? Me, for one, I'm very kind of, I have a very kind of active mind. Always needs kind of like stimulation, and it's a massive like overthinker, major. Like, I can spend hours trying to think of something or work out something, and then totally lose concept of time. Yeah. So this kind of hobby is kind of like a sort of a therapy, I suppose, really. It's an interest because you're interested in looking after the animal as best as you can, as well, going to me now, as best as I can. I'm interested in, doing the best for him. But it's also therapeutic because it's like when you just like looking at the plants and the soil and that, I just find it really, really interesting and fascinating. And I've always been interested in nature since a youngster. I used to collect butterflies and ladybirds and all that when I was a youngster, and yeah. But no, I think it's just a sort of a intriguing concept to sort of tap into how the psychology of keepers works and how it fits into the hobby? Why is it? What is it that makes us want to keep these sorts of exotic creatures? Um, so yeah, it's just look at him, absolutely loving it. But yeah, going back to how my brain works. So I was diagnosed with mild Asperger's syndrome when I was around about the age of 6. And Asperger's syndrome is kind of like on the autism spectrum, which basically is the autism spectrum is like a communication. So people on the autism spectrum will have sometimes can experience difficulties with social communication, social understanding, emotions, and that kind of thing. And they also can have special interests, which can take over, and they can be very, very focused on those interests. So me, for instance, with this hobby, I'm very, very focused on developing the hobby. And I have other interests as well. When I was, I play the piano. I'm artistic. And I used to have a special interest in running, but that's kind of fizzled out now since this guy's come along and other things have got in the way. I just haven't made time to go running, but I used to love running. Swimming as well, I used to like doing. But again, I haven't done that for a while. But this hobby, like my piano, I mean, I've been playing the piano since I was about 6 years old. And I've been keeping leopard geckos on and off for roughly about the same time. And so, despite the Asperger's syndrome, I consider that as kind of like a perk and a quirk. So there's negatives and positives to it. Sometimes I can struggle with abstract like thinking, and so like maths tends to take. I mean, I'm slowly getting there, but like it's certain concepts of like. So I have to kind of like not stick rigidly to a timetable, but I do like routine and knowing where I am. There has been a change recently, which some of you who follow me on Facebook through the reptile groups may be aware of, but I have actually finished one job and moving into another job in order to fit around studying for a qualification. So there's been that change. I'm not worried about it because it's something that I wanted to do. My previous job was getting me down, so I wanted to kind of move on from it. So relating that to the Asperger's hasn't kind of affected me in any way, shape or form because it's something that I wanted to do myself. Whereas when COVID happened and I ended up suddenly kind of moving out from where I was living, my world just flipped really, and I was kind of like out of it for about a week. It took me a while. I moved back to my mum's and I was just unsettled. I mean, I suppose anybody in that situation that would have to suddenly drop everything that they were doing to change around, to fit around this COVID situation. And it was actually, it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time for a lot of people. And back when COVID happened, I didn't have this guy here because I was living elsewhere and I was training towards becoming a youth worker. Because I used to work as a support worker with adults with learning differences such as autism and dyslexia and ADHD and that sort of thing. So I thought it'd be quite fitting to up that career into becoming a youth worker, and supporting young people, like vulnerable people, with, learning differences is what I like to call it, really. It's not learning difficulty. I'd rather call it a learning difference, because it's just a different way the brain processes and interprets information. So, but COVID happened, and I just wasn't, I wasn't really adapt. Well, I don't know, it just changed. So I ended up moving to my mum's because I was on my own where I was previously, in a little flat. And it just got a bit depressing living on my own during all this uncertainty with COVID. And the training that I was doing all came to a stop. And I didn't have a job at the time to support myself. So I literally moved, found a job in a factory just to kind of make ends meet, and had to start again, really. So, and then it's funny how things like that make you revert back to your hobbies and interests as a kind of comfort. And my interest in leopard geckos sort of came back to life, really, and then I ended up getting this guy. So after a few little trial and errors along the way, with 2 baby geckos that I bought, but they sadly passed away. So from that moment, I sort of thought, right, I don't want, something like that to happen again. So I need to up my game a bit and up my kind of, I want to give, want to do the best for this guy. And so, yeah, so that's kind of like why I really got into this hobby. But also, taking into account the plants, I did gardening. I was self-employed gardener for 5 years, which did, I was doing really well. I was progressing as a one-man band. But then boredom hit because all my customers just wanted neat, tidy squares and rectangles, and I wanted to kind of create wild, wonderful, natural kind of. And so there was, there's only so many hedges and lawns that you can cut, guys, every day. So boredom just hit. It became mundane. And when you're self-employed, it's difficult. It's harder anyway, because you have to do all your paperwork yourself and all the kind of marketing and advertising and, pricing up jobs and stuff. So it literally 70 hours a week, I was working flat out, and so it was hard. So then I switched to doing support work while I was doing my youth work training. But yeah, life just, sometimes things get in the way, and then things change, and then you have to kind of like refine your sort of path in a way. And I think now that I'm sort of starting a new journey towards becoming an ecologist, I think that kind of blends the experiences that I've had previously with like gardening, with working with people and working with nature, and then this hobby. I think that kind of all kind of combined will, should hopefully enable me to progress to become an ecologist, because I've got a sort of an interest in how nature works. I'm just interested in how it all works, and I'm very inquisitive into kind of why do the plants like it there and not over there, or things like that. And well, how does the soil interact, and how does the earthworms interact with the soil? I'm always asking these sorts of questions, which makes me sort of really interested, which is why I'm going down the ecology road. And also it's the sort of wanting to be in a job where I'm on, a sort of a comfortable salary. I mean, I've been in so many different jobs which are linked to interests, but they're kind of like because I'm not qualified other than my GCSEs. It's always been a struggle financially and stuff. I mean, we're fine. We're keeping head above water, but it's always been difficult to kind of like, you know, there's just limits. But then again, I've been spending all my money on this, so it's probably, when I was working in the factories and warehouses, it paid well, so it enabled me to pay for all this. So there's, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? There's always kind of reasons why things happen and why we do things, a certain way. But yeah, so that explains a little bit about the psychology behind my hobby. And going back to my Asperger's, I don't see it as a barrier in any shape, way, or form. I've held down jobs since leaving high school. I've been working since the age of 15. I'm now 34. And, I'm lucky enough to have like a supportive network of friends and family around me that understand me. And we've got that solid kind of bond. And, I've had random interests in the past, which is linked to Asperger's. And my dad is kind of the same because he's had lots of random different interests. He didn't get diagnosed, but, in that generation, my dad is in his late 50s now. So in that sort of era, there wasn't the tools to kind of diagnose. People didn't know what Asperger's was. I mean, there was totally different kind of ball game to kind of like learning differences and stuff then, back in those days. Whereas now society is much more inclusive and much more aware of things. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I went to mainstream high school, passed my exams, scraped through my maths, which I was really pleased with, and have done well with jobs. I've even travelled around the world on my own. So I think that, again, may sort of, so that awareness of, when I was traveling, I was like kind of farm hopping. So I was doing bits of gardening, bits of farm work in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, America, traveled around Europe. It was just when in my early 20s, I just wanted to get that out of my system. I just wanted to go and explore, and that was before I went into support work. And obviously during that time I wasn't keeping reptiles because it wouldn't be fair on them whilst I was on my gallivants, and these guys, I mean, yes, there would have been people that would have looked after them, but it wouldn't have been fair on them to put the burden onto their shoulders, just so I could go on my jollies. So I wasn't keeping any reptiles during that time. But yeah, so this guy is a case, and I do find the whole hobby fascinating, stimulating. There's always something to learn about. It's therapeutic as well. So if I've had a bad day at the office or something and I come home and I look at this fella, and it just completely calms me down and gets me back down to kind of earth. And just, when I wake up in the morning and see this plant, the plants and that, it's just, it's like a sort of like a zen. So yeah, I really have put a lot into it, but I enjoy it. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I'm passionate about. And, it's an interest. It's just something I love doing, So there we are, guys. Kind of gone on a bit, but I think it's all relevant. And I think it's good to kind of know, really, about personality traits of keepers. I mean, we always talk about our animals or our exotic pets, but we don't often talk about ourselves and the reason why we're in that position, how we got there, So I thought that I'd share that little bit of info with you about myself. And I think it's just yeah, onwards and upwards, isn't it? Really, keep going. Over and out, guys.